Here they go, they're throttling up. 1,000 knots, 1,200 knots, 1,500 knots, 1,800 knots, 2,000 knots. Exponentially more difficult to kill now. All of a sudden it's just got very exciting. Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. Last week we did this battle. Could a 2020's US carrier group survive a huge Chinese missile boat swarm? The idea was that 20 missile boats surprised a US carrier group at just over 100 miles. They fired 160 YJ-83 subsonic sea-hugging anti-ship missiles at the carrier strike group. The carrier strike group had to defend itself. And we got some really interesting results. The US Aegis system did a brilliant job, destroying almost all 160 missiles. I think 4 or 5 got through in the end and took out a single destroyer. So, in my opinion, a resounding win to US. Some of you guys disagreed, but so be it. Anyway, lots of you guys requested a follow-up, and probably the best written was this here from my friend Jeffrey. Any chance you would redo this video, and this time have it against the best Russian ship platform that exists in sea power, launching SSN-22, so that is the Mark III capable Sunburn anti-ship missile, at the carrier group to see how long before you were able to get leakage, which means is where the missiles start to get through and taking out the ships. You could also have the carrier launching a few Super Hornets that would be doing combat air patrol a little ways out and could assist in shooting all incoming missiles. If an aircraft carrier was able to, it would launch aircraft as quickly as possible to assist in shooting down all incoming missiles. Less missiles the ship have to fire, the better. I'm curious to see how sea power would handle potential for friendly fire. Interesting, depending on how far out the Super Hornets were though. Right, really interesting request, and as I said, echoed by many of you. So I'm going to try and fit everything into this one video. I'm going to try to do 3 tests and see how it goes. Test 1. How would the best Russian Cold War supersonic anti-ship missiles do if fired in a worst case scenario for the US, which is altogether, time on target, loads of missiles. Then I figured it would be a good idea to do the same but replace the 1980s, 1990s Russian missiles with modern supersonic anti-ship missiles. So today is all about supersonic missiles. That's what differentiates it from what we did last time. Last time it was subsonic missiles, small, hard to see, flying low, but slow. This time it's supersonic. That's the whole idea behind these missiles. That's what makes them so hard to defend against. Probably the best to choose would be a Chinese YJ-18. That's a modern supersonic anti-ship missile. It's much smarter than the old Russian ones. The old Russian ones are not very smart. The Chinese ones, which actually are based on the Russian Caliber cruise missile, are much smarter. They can change their speed much better. They can fly much lower and so on. We'll see how that goes. Finally, we'll do a version with the Super Hornets that you guys wanted. You guys say if a CSG was attacked at long range and there was time, Super Hornets would get airborne and go and shoot down the missiles, and I get that, and I'll do my best to do it. The reason why I haven't done that thus far, viewers, is because when I do this, if we're going to do this, we might as well do it properly, with loads of missiles being fired. There's no point of firing 20 missiles at a US CSG. Obviously, it's going to deal with them easily. 40, it's going to deal with them easily. You've got to fire nearly 100 or over 100 to really test the carrier strike group. When you do that in sea power, it gets so slow it becomes unplayable. I have to control the aeroplanes manually to shoot down missiles. The AI can't do that. It can't do it yet anyway. And so, well, you see the problem. It becomes unplayable because it's so slow, so I can't actually do it. A quick look at the setup. The US carrier group is, of course, led by a Nimitz. In terms of her escort, it's the best case scenario for America. 6 modern Arleigh Burkes, fully fitted with modern defensive missiles. You'll probably never see a carrier strike group like this in real life. In real life, they're mixed, old, new, because of real life factors. But if we're going to give the hostiles the best possible attack, then it's only fair that we give the America the best possible defense. So, Arleigh Burkes, full to the gunnels in their VLS with SM6, ESSM, and SM2. The most modern variant. A lot of you complained that I'm stupid because I didn't put SM3 in these last time. Well, no, SM3 is an anti-ballistic missile. It only shoots at ballistic missiles. There are no ballistic missiles here, so they would be absolutely useless at defending low and medium flying missiles. They'll have an E2C, AWACS, airborne, and obviously that will be their eyes. That will be what's guiding the missiles in. The first variant we'll run will be the Soviet 1980s, 1990s supersonic missiles, the best of which was the SSN-22. known as the Sunburn, capable of 3 times the speed of sound. I've done tests in DCS, and this is the most effective one. It gets through the defensive best per missile. We'll start with 10 Sovereign destroyers, each carrying 8. So 80 is probably the most supersonic missiles that are ever going to get fired at anything. I doubt there would be enough ships to fire any more than that, or, to be honest, enough missiles. They'll fire at 150 miles, and I guess I see what happens. So let's run this. I haven't run this yet, so I'm as interested or intrigued as you guys at the moment. I hope it all works. Okay, we're in. Let's just quickly remind ourselves of the formation and the constitution of the missiles in the escort ship. So 6 escort ships, 1 carrier group spread out over 10 miles. I've biased the defense towards the possible threat, which is in this case of China, and I forgot to say the carrier strike group is sailing 300 miles off a hostile coast. They're not expecting the attack, but they are prepared for it. And each Arleigh Burke is armed with 26 SM6, known as RIM 174, 40 modern SM2, and 40 ESSM, and of course CWES. So let's set the Soviet attack off. If it all works, they should fire 80 SSN-22 Sunburns. And that's pretty damn impressive. The Sunburn missile, as great as it was in the 1980s, 1990s, and it is still in service, by the way. I checked, it is still in service. It's one of the other reasons I use this. It's you know, it is 1980s tech, so to get the range of 150 miles, its maximum range roughly, it has to fly high here, 30,000 feet. It can't fly low all the way. What's bad about flying high? Well, it makes it vulnerable, of course. Right, I'm just going to pause at that point and double check everything's worked. So that is, yep, that is 10 by 8, 80 Sunburn's worst possible scenario for America. Supersonic 80 missiles altogether. I'm going to quickly delete the vessels so that they don't play any further part. Okay, vessels removed. Now the next thing is we can only allow us to start firing when we actually spot the missiles. Obviously it'll be the AWACS, because of its over the horizon radar, that will spot the missiles the same as in the last scenario, and it looks like it's already spotted them actually at a huge range of, well over 100 nautical miles, because they would have disappeared otherwise. If I can see them, then one of our sensors can see them. So that's it, we can fire. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to quickly set these guys to free fire. Now here's the problem. I knew we would have not a problem, but I knew we'd have a feature like this, and that's why I wanted after this to do the modern supersonic missiles. The modern supersonic missiles are much smarter, much harder to see. Off we go, defense. Now they're all linked together, these vessels, so they will fire properly, linked together with their Aegis or their simulated Aegis system. They won't just fire willy-nilly. Now how many will they fire? They will fire more than 80 defensive missiles. They'll fire 2 or 3. They're firing tables, and that table will tell them how many SM6s to fire per target, which appears to be a lot. And you can start to see the reason now why I'm going to struggle to use Super Hornets, because I'm down to unplayable FPS, which is just, you know, the nature of these massive combats. We've probably got 200 missiles airborne. I think Sea Power could be a bit slicker how it handles these missiles, because I've done kind of side-by-side testing, and DCS can handle more missiles in the air at once. But it's an early game, and it will almost certainly improve. Getting really boggy now. Well, amazingly, they fired all 24 missiles from each ship. They fired 144 missiles at 80 hostile missiles, and that's completely reasonable. In fact, it's firing more now. It's firing SM2. Well, this is really interesting, viewers. It's now also firing SM2. I didn't think we'd see those today. That's a beam riding type of missile, and the SM2 has to be guided in by the fire control radar off of the ship, which means not only can AWACS see these, but the ships can see these, because they're flying high. They're non-stealthy, they're big fat intakes, and they're flying high, which means they're very easy to defend against. Why do they do that? Well, all that I can think of, I think all Russian Soviet-era supersonic missiles had to fly high in their cruise phase to save enough fuel to actually get to the target. Now that wasn't a problem against 1980s threats, because 1980s American radars and missiles couldn't have done much about it, but 2020s, well, we can see them from, well, since they've been fired pretty much. So this should be a good test in how not only defensive but offensive missiles have developed over the last 40 years. Right, I'm going to guess we've got about 250 missiles in play. These SM6s up at 100,000 feet. diving down now on their quarry. It's imperative that they shoot these missiles before they go low in the terminal phase. Well, I say that, that's not actually true. Because of the over-the-horizon capability of the AWACS to guide in American missiles like the SM-6 over the horizon, to be honest, we could hit these from probably 50, 60 miles out, even if they were sea skimming. That's how much better a 2020's carrier group is defended, US carrier group, compared to Cold War technology. Here they come. SM-6 is dropping out of space just like they would do in real life. Because of the way they guide, the missile itself can just concentrate on going as optimally, flying as optimally as it can. So it will go up like on a big arc like that. It gives it its huge range because it doesn't have to worry about its guidance per se, which is going to be taken care of by the AWACS. That's not strictly true. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. Well, plenty being taken out, some being missed, as I'm sure they would be in real life, and you've got to think how complex the situation this is. 80 missiles travelling at 2.5 times the speed of sound. That's so impressive. Look at that. So what we're seeing here is the best of 2020 versus the best of 1980s. Jesus, look at that. Kudos PC for not crashing. One left is the one I chose as well. 1 in 80 chance. And only 200 missiles. Wow, they really wanted them dead. So they fired like 4 missiles per threat. Amazingly, this one's going to get through as well. Why is that? Well, probably all of these other ones were tasked for different missiles, and it just so happens... Oh, well, there you go. We've depleted a lot of our stores. That said, we've still got probably 60, 70 missiles per ship left, so we can still defend a big attack. But, kind of as we predicted there, as good as the Soviet missiles were at the time, they had to fly high in the cruise phase, which for a modern setup like this, with an AWACS that could see them well over 100 miles away, made them incredibly vulnerable, and they were, in the end, extremely easy to shoot down. I can't make it much harder than that. If I use P700s, it's going to do the same thing. If I use the P1000, it's going to do the same thing. So, let's up the hostile threat to 2020s. Welcome back, viewers. This time I've replaced the 10 Sovereign Minis with 5 Type 055 from the plan. Each vessel has 16 YJ-18 supersonic anti-ship missiles, total, again, 80. And that's pretty much it, and go. Now let's talk about why the YJ-18 is so much more of a threat than the Soviet era missiles. Well, it has the same terminal performance in that it flies low, sea skimming at 3 times the speed of sound, so that kind of thing's similar. Its jammers, or its electronic warfare, is obviously upgraded, but that said, it probably works itself out about even because the radars that will be detecting them are also better than the missiles that we're shooting against them. Pause, because I've just realised that missile's been fired. I'll get rid of it in a second. What I'm expecting to see that will be the biggest benefit for the YJ is the fact that it's going to fly its crews low down. So it's going to be much harder to shoot down. A low target is going to be much harder to see, and it's going to be harder to hit. Remember, the Sunburns are bigger radar cross sections. These are much smaller. This isn't actually the right model. This is a Tomahawk model. The YJ-18 is smaller than the Tomahawk. It's harder to see, and it's designed with the low observability in mind. It's not a stealth missile, but it's lower observability. So we're not going to see it at over 100 miles. Probably. We're probably going to see it at about 50 miles. Alright, I've just got to do some housekeeping here. Okay, I've removed the ships and the missiles. Now look at this. This time, they're becoming invisible. That means we can't see them. Now, we can imagine that they were fired hundreds of miles away. These things have a range of over 300 miles, I believe. So let's imagine they're being fired a long way away, and we can't see them in their cruise phase. So we can't fire until Mr. AWACS detects them, which is going to be a little while, I imagine. So fast forward until they arrive. So already we can start seeing, okay, they're being found at a relatively high distance. I wouldn't have thought YJ would be detected that easily, but just over 60 nautical miles. Pause. Well, let's set our guys to free fire. We've legitimately seen them. Now, if that was a stealth missile, like Naval Strike Missile, like America's LRASM missile, then instead of 60 miles, it would be much lower, 20 miles or whatever. Good luck, boys! Remember, same amount of incoming missiles, 80. Much less fired. This time, only 8 missiles fired per vessel. Each vessel, they're going to average everything out per vessel. Why so few viewers? Well, I don't know. I don't actually know. Maybe we can only see a few of the missiles. In fact, we can. We can only see a handful of the missiles. Now, that's interesting. There must be some radar modelling that's saying a lot of them are hidden behind the echoes of the other ones. That's surprisingly advanced, actually. Diving from 100,000 feet. Now, are we going to get hits? They are genuinely more difficult to hit at sea level because it's harder for a radar in the nose of the missile, which is how an SM-6 works. It's harder for that radar to see stuff against the ground clutter. That's frigging impressive. Ladies and gentlemen, I gave you 2020's US defense. Alright, let's recap. America has done well. A few have missed, as you can see, which is inevitable for the reasons that we've spoken about. But a lot have got through. Okay, here come the next salvo of SM-6. This time they've been fired low down, which is a bit unexpected and probably unrealistic, but let's go with it. Next salvo of YJ has been taken out. Let's see what kind of range they're at now. Remember, they're not supersonic at this point. They cruise slow to save fuel. It's how they get their massive 400-mile range or whatever it is. 40 miles, they've got to 40 miles and they're still going. Next, we've got more SM-6s diving down. I saw some doubling up of targets there, which is inefficient of the SM-6 and unfortunately probably inevitable. Remember, you only have so much control of an SM-6. You can only actually control it until it turns its own radar on. When it turns its own radar on, it will go for whichever target it decides to do. So, with all the will in the world, there's only so efficient it can be. Only a handful left. Honestly, that's a lot better than they thought they were going to be. So, really well simulated Aegis here. Looks like we're out of SM-6 now, so all, however many been, 8 or whatever have been fired. We're now onto this funny looking thing, which is a simulation for an ESSM. Being fired over the horizon, again on a track from the data link. And they are 100% missing, struggling to see and hit these well enough. That said, there's only 2 left. Pause. Right, so whereas the Soviet missiles were wiped out, well, probably outside of 100 miles, I didn't see in the end, outside of 90 miles, something like that, the same amount of Chinese missiles got within 30 miles, but still, to my surprise, never actually threatened us too much. Viewers, why don't we up that to 160 missiles? It may not work, but let's try it. Okay, 160 missiles, go! This is going to get really slow, viewers. Oh, look at that, there's a direct... Oh, no, predictions, yeah, this is 100% going to get through. There is no way of stopping 160 of these missiles. So don't get your hopes up, viewers. Right, I'm just going to do some housekeeping. I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. We'll let them disappear off radar and then wait until they reappear. Bye-bye missiles. Reappearing at 60 miles. Okay, let's turn the Aegis on button on. I'm just thinking, as I'm doing this, viewers, you could actually control Aegis a bit here by choosing which vessel fires and which don't. So you could throttle the amount of missiles that they were firing and make Aegis a lot more efficient in sea power. You don't need to do this in real life, obviously. Real Aegis is much smarter. It can conserve missiles better. Obviously, sea power DCS not so much. But we could control the rate of fire off the carrier group by turning them on and off. Now I won't do that today, I'll just let everything fire. Interestingly, they've only fired a few again, and that's probably because, yep, only a couple are on scope. Interestingly, how many? There are 3 on scope, and we fired 6 missiles, so we're firing 2 SM6s per threat is what we're doing. So that would mean we'd need 320 SM6s to take these missiles down, which we certainly do not have, so you can see a big problem already. First hits coming in. So the bulk of the missiles you can only see at about 50 miles. That's actually what I guessed, about 50 miles, yeah. Interesting. You see these lines moving about here, viewers, here. That's where it's changing from AWACS guidance to PIPL guidance, its own internal radar, and that's where the handover problem can be in terms of efficiency of taking down a swarm. I wonder, oh wow, they've almost done it. They've almost done it. Assuming that we can see everything, which I'm pretty sure we can, they've almost done it. That really is something, viewers. That really is something. Looking at how many missiles have been fired. All SM6s have been fired, and almost all ESSMs have been fired, so that means probably about 300 missiles have been fired. So the PK is a lot better than it was last time. We'll talk about that in a minute, shall we? That said, we're getting mighty close now. Soon these guys are going to throttle up and go to 3 times the speed of sound, so They've really got to think about taking them out. Here they go, they're throttling up. 1,000 knots, 1,200 knots, 1,500 knots, 1,800 knots, 2,000 knots. Exponentially more difficult to kill now. All of a sudden it's just got very exciting. Come on, take him out. Just a few more to go. Just a little bit more, as Baby says. Be more. Nearly done, we're nearly done. Come on. Everything. The Americans have pushed the everything button, but the problem is you just can't stop them once they're going this fast. Maybe they can, I don't know. Oh, that went from boring to... Oh my god, tell me it's not the last... Oh, Jesus H. Corbett. That's how close they got. Now, let's dissect that, viewers, and because I've been thinking about... Oh, the carrier's hit. One got through. That's amazing. Damage control. Alright, one missile got through. They have relatively small warheads on them compared to those Russian missiles. If a Russian missile got through, that's a carrier killer. The more modern missiles are... In fact, here's a really important point I forgot, viewers. When I was talking about the benefit of the modern supersonic missiles compared to the old ones, I missed the biggest thing, which is the intelligence of them. The old Russian ones were had old 80s radars on them and an ability to interpret that, and the best they could do is kind of divide themselves up between targets and sort of choose the biggest target. But that's easy to fool if you're an American, because all you got to do is put a bunch of chaff out on one of the picket vessels and it looks to the missile like a giant carrier, right? So it's easy to fool. But the new Chinese missiles, based on Russian missiles, are much smarter. They have optical sensors, they have electro-optical sensors, infrared spectrum sensors. They can see the ships and understand the ships and know what's a carrier, and it's much harder for the Americans to disguise which is the prize vessel, right? So that's actually the biggest thing. And you saw that previously when we used Russian missiles. They tend to divide themselves out between the ships, whereas these all went for the prize asset, which is the American carrier. So that's interesting. Anyway, sorry, back on topic, viewers. We just took out 160 supersonic missiles. How did we do that, but we couldn't do, in the identical scenario, the subsonic missiles here? These never went supersonic. Otherwise, they were the same. They were seen at the same distance. They went at the same height. They went at the same speed. Well, the reason is, I'm guessing, we've just had a major update in Sea Power. The game is very much being made as we speak, and they've just updated the missiles. I know, because a couple of you guys have told me. And it looks like they've seriously upgraded Aegis and the ability for it to take on missiles. That's probably what we just saw there. Is that a problem? No, not really. I mean, I don't know how good Aegis is in real life. None of us do. So let's just go with it. So one missile of 160, you could not script that, got through. The other 159 failed. And that's top notch. There is no way in hell that you would get a better attack than that. More than 160 supersonic missiles fired from the same place at the same time is just impossible. So I don't think we can make it much harder. I don't think there's much point of doing the Super Hornet attack now where I send out the Super Hornets, because what's the point? We've just proved that it can defend itself now. It doesn't need Super Hornets to go up. So I think I'll do that in a different video where I remove some of the escorts and... Oh, you know what? I've got an idea. Stand by. Welcome back, viewers. What I was going to do is send out the Super Hornets, a squadron of them from the carrier, and see if just the Super Hornets could take down those missiles. But I've run into a problem. If I use Super Hornets from the carrier, or just anywhere, I can use it with AMRAAM, air-to-air missiles. The problem is those AMRAAMs aren't currently working against sea missiles. They will miss. If you remember last time we tried this, they hit behind the anti-shipping missile and miss. So I tried to install the mod that allows the AIM-174B, the US Navy's latest long-range air-to-air missile, and I can't get it working. I've installed it. I've put the aircraft down. I go to loadouts and it's not there. So maybe it's just something I'm doing wrong. So I've run into technical problems with that, viewers. It's okay. I don't really want to do it anyway. I think we're happy with where we are there, viewers. I'll get the Hornets working in my own time, if I ever get any, and I'll come back and we'll do a third scenario. What if there was a squadron of ready, equipped air-to-air Super Hornets aboard a carrier? Could just that defend a carrier if there were no or very few escort ships, which, to be honest, is a perfectly realistic scenario. Sometimes carriers only have 1 or 2 escorts. But I think the video was still good. We showed the difference between old and modern supersonic missiles, and we showed that with our newly upgraded Aegis, we can almost beat 160 supersonic modern missiles. So that fills me with a bit of hope. I hope you enjoyed it, and bye-bye.